So, welcome to the Rotary Earth Networks Club's fourth meeting. We're that young, and we just want to welcome all of you from all of the continents. We've got Africa, Europe, uh, Central America, and North America, and Asia. We're everywhere except Antarctica. We need to find a member in Antarctica. So, welcome to our weekly meeting. We're grateful to our members, associates, and donors and volunteers for their support making this possible. And please consider joining us as a member if you're not already in Rotary, or an associate to help support so others can join as well. Please mute your audio when you're not speaking. Recordings and resources will be available on the Earth Talks Foundation when we are done with that. And the speaker views, this is just our normal disclaimer, speaker views are their own and don't necessarily reflect the club or Rotary International. And so Bertel will lead us in
The Rotary four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth?
Is the environmental information accurate, science-based, and transparent?
Second, is it fair to all concerned?
Does it protect people, ecosystems, and future generations?
Third, will it build goodwill or better friendships?
Does it encourage collaboration, shared responsibility, and community trust?
And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Does it improve environmental health, human well-being, and long-term sustainability? Thank you, Bert. I appreciate your help on that. And so just a reminder, because we are an international club, we do have the availability of closed caption translations. So if you're hard of hearing like me, or if you would prefer a different language, you simply go to the bottom of your screen or your phone and navigate to closed captions on the bottom, and then choose your speaking language. And you can choose from, oh my gosh, I think there are like 90 different languages. And press that, and you'll see those at the bottom of the screen. So now, any club business, is there anything someone would like to bring up, announcements before we get started and launch into our wonderful speaker? Any announcements? Well, I have an announcement. It looks like two big announcements. Our club was approved by Rotary International. We're waiting for a few more things to happen with them because we're in District 5400, the state of Idaho. And so once we get all the legal stuff put together, and then we can open up a bank account and we can get it up on our website and we can start collecting. Everyone's been asking, when do we get to pay our membership fees? When do we get to pay to be associates? Well, it's getting closer every day. I'm guessing a couple more weeks, but we'll get there. The second thing is, just to let you know, our club has been invited to do the back end production work it's one of the biggest Rotary environmental events. It's a part of organization in Dallas called the Eco Earth Expo, I think. Anyway, it's called the Environmental Experience. Barry Rassin, we just found out a few hours ago, will be there. And our club will be doing the back-end production work. So, yay for our international club. All right. So, and Karen, am I missing anything else?
No, that sounds great. It's really exciting to tell you about that. Earth Experience. Yeah, we can put, Najodi will probably put the link in the chat sometime today.
Yeah, and let's make sure. Good, great.
Yeah.
Okay, and Najodi, I'm going to make you co-host in just a moment while I introduce Spotlight. And okay, so it is an honor and a privilege because Joe's and I have worked together for over a year and he's just delightful. So it is an honor to have him here. He's an angel investor, writer, and former business to business media executive who bridges the gap between financial strategy and spiritual well-being. After rising from childhood poverty to become a retired multimillionaire at age 45, Joseph realized that traditional definitions of success were insufficient for navigating a chaotic world. He has since reinvented himself an intentional investor in green tech, funding startups like Carbon Wave and Carbon Geocapture, that are turning climate pollution into sustainable solutions. Joseph's investing philosophy is grounded in the Buddhist concept of equanimity, which he uses to counter climate anxiety, doomsday, and rage economy. He advocates for making friends with your future self as a strategy for long-term decision-making, arguing that we must invest today to ensure a habitable world for the person that we will become. A member of the Transatlantic Angel Conference, Joseph splits his time between Bellington, Washington, and Mexico City, where he practices the art of creating islands of sustainability through conscious resource allocation. And please welcome Joseph. What an honor to have him here.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
I
Always.
appreciate so much being asked. If any of you guys know Lori, sounds like a lot of you do. She's someone that you want to say yes to when you can. So when she asked me to present, I of course wanted to find a way to say yes. I haven't really thought of this as a kind of a formal presentation. I've never done anything like this before. So I'll tell you what I'm not. I'm not an expert in investing. I'm not an expert in mindfulness, but I am a concerned citizen like all of you who wanted to find ways to combat my own climate despair and anxiety. And I've come up with a method, a rubric that works for me. And I hope that some of this will be useful for some of you. I have a feeling that if any of you are mindfulness practitioners, some of this might be review for you. I think that's okay. I think a lot of the value of these kinds of things are coming together in community and realizing that there's a lot of us who are engaged in this work, who are sending energy in this direction. And even if I'm telling you stuff, now you know me, and now you know that I'm part of your community, working toward many of the same goals that you are working toward. I'm sure you guys have noticed the climate news is horrible. It's relentlessly grim. 2024 is the hottest year on record, followed closely by 2023 and 2025. And, I think for people with a US centric view, it can feel sometimes tempting to think that the problems the US is facing are unique. That's actually not true. There's kind of been a global, I think, back off of a lot of the forward momentum that we had been making on climate progress. A lot of that has been stalled. There's a new minister in the Czech Republic who said the climate crisis is over. A lot of the Latin American governments are rolling back. And then, of course, the one big, beautiful bill that Trump passed, which in the US has really gutted the renewable energy industry and added additional subsidies for fossil fuels. So it's very tempting to feel despair. And I think we all have ways to combat that. And I want to give you, some of my tips. I think the other aspect of this, and I worked in media for a long time, so I have some view into this, is that we exist right now in a rage economy. And what I mean by that, it's not really my original idea. It's been around for a while, but in the last 20 years, there's been an exponential increase. I don't have the exact stats in front of me because I can't see my notes, but headlines that contain rage or despair, even sadness, have increased exponentially because that's what gets clicks in the attention economy. And so I think we need to think of our attention as a resource and not be bait for the rage economy, for a media environment that's trying to inflame us, scare us, and make us doubt. It takes some work and some conscious effort to look away and to look at other things. And anyway, so on the mindfulness piece, so equanimity is not passivity. And our goal is not to look away from the problem and pretend it doesn't exist. Our goal ought to be to take care of ourselves so that we have resources when the time comes to make a choice, that we're able to make good choices. And shoot, I really could use my notes on this slide. But I think you guys get the point about mindfulness. Any questions? Or do any of you have a mindfulness practice that you're using in your daily lives to kind of help you back away from this rage economy, this media environment, this ecosystem that's trying to make us angry? No. Okay. All right. I think it's important to have both a vision to know what kind of world we want to live in and a strategy for how we're going to get there. For me, that is one of the things that helps me to combat these feelings of anxiety and despair. And I think having a plan allows us to feel like we are agents in this action, that it's not just us being buffeted by what's happening. The world is going to go on, and we are, the climate crisis will continue to unfold. But I think if we're taking small steps, even in our personal lives, that feel meaningful, it can help us to, again, combat that despair and visualize something better that we're moving toward. And I think there's real meaning in that. So here are some of the tactics I use. For the last several years, I've had a Google alert on my for climate tech. Part of this is because I'm an investor, but it's something that I honestly suggest that you do or think about, because it will get you away from the angry headlines. Surprisingly, there's a lot of great news happening in climate tech. There's innovation happening constantly. I will say over the last year, this Google News alert that I've set up, it's had a little more bad news because of some of the political stuff that's been happening and some of the funding cuts. But the innovation pieces are super interesting. It's so affirming to hear that some of the smartest minds in the world are working on these problems, coming up with solutions. There's been some fascinating developments recently in microplastics that are biodegradable to solve some of those problems. We're moving toward a world where we have different adhesive materials that are not nearly as toxic and not petroleum based. So some of the sources I turn to, again, I have that climate tech Google News alert. I've signed up for Canary Media. I love the Carbon Brief. It's a weekly roundup of kind of all the good news that's happening. And then I listen to podcasts. I try to replace the anger media diet with things that inform and inspire me. I listen to podcasts like The Energy Gang, the Energy Transition Show, Catalyst with Shale Khan. I think he produces daily content. So this keeps me up to speed on what's happening in the world of innovation. It reminds me again that I'm part of a community of people who are focused on this positive change. And it really does help to keep my focus in positive places rather than getting sucked into fights on Facebook or Reddit or, whatever else might be trying to distract from my attention. One thing I do, if I catch myself doom scrolling and freaking out, I stop. I try to. Let me say I'm an imperfect practitioner. I'm a learner. So, some of this is do as I say and not as I do. I don't always follow my own advice, but I try to catch myself. I try to take a moment to feel grateful, to think about 3 things in my life that are awesome and something that I can do right in this moment. And always I want to look towards something that I can do, because to me that feels like empowerment. That feels like taking action, even if it's a very small one. And then this is a little trick I learned. I worked in education media for some years, and I listened to a Finnish educator once talking about how they taught Finnish school children to manage anxiety. And as Lori mentioned, I grew up very poor. I have sort of had a lifelong struggle with anxiety. And if you write down your anxieties, I take 15 minutes at night and I just write down the things that worry me. And then I make a contract with myself that I'm not going to worry about those things until the next day. And they teach Finnish school children. And it apparently is very effective for their educational outcomes. And I have found it to be a good life hack for me. So something I want to share with all of you. So I want to talk a little bit about my journey into angel investing. I became an investor really largely by accident. This media company that I worked for many years, I was the 12th employee. It ended up being acquired by a big multinational, and I got a payout. My options suddenly had value. And it was a little light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, oh, well, I understand now why angel investing works. If you're patient and you back good ideas, it can be quite effective in terms of improving your financial well-being. So my first I did want to become intentional about green investing. So I read a couple of books on angel investing, and I developed what they call an investment thesis, the things that I care about. And but my first couple of big checks I wrote without any real education in angel investing. And it felt quite risky. And I still feel good about those investments, but I did want to get a little more scientific about it. And I also wanted to find a community, because again, I think that's a very important aspect of this, to feel like collective action is more effective than individual action. So I researched green tech accelerators and startup accelerators, and I encourage all of you to do that. If ChatGPT will be your friend here, you can find one that's near you. I'm certain there's an angel investment group operating in if you're in a large city near you, and if you're not in a large city, reasonably near you. I ended up choosing the Transatlantic Angel Conference which is affiliated with the Startup Investor Alliance. You can find them on LinkedIn under SIA, because it focused on it's an international cohort of investors who came together, and that matched my life. I live in the U.S., but I live in Mexico most of the year, and so I joined this transatlantic angel conference. Most of the investors were based in Europe and Barcelona. There were 34 of us. We started with a list of 86 startups, and we went through and vetted them. And this was a really wonderful process for me because I know a lot about B2B media and marketing, and the way I had made my decisions about companies I invested in was really, would I know how to market this? But I'm not someone who can read a CapEx table. I'm not someone who has enough product expertise to be able to push back on a founder who tells me that they have a 5-year moat and a product IP that really can't be replicated. I have to, to some degree go on my gut with those things. So it was super helpful to be part of a cohort of people who had that expertise. And I learned so much from the questions that they asked. So again, I think, the main theme here is that there's one of the reasons I recommend joining an angel group or angel network is that there is power in working together. And you can lend your expertise, you can learn from other people's expertise, and that becomes part of the value of it. So here's just a handful of the companies that I'm invested in. I think Lori mentioned a couple of them at the top, but I'll just tell you what they do. It's very cool stuff. So Carbon Wave, if any of you have been to Cancun or any of the Caribbean beaches in the last few years, you probably have noticed piles of rotting seaweed on the beaches. And this is a new phenomenon. This didn't happen 20 years ago. This is a direct result of climate change. The heating of the Atlantic Ocean has caused these sargassum blooms to wildly overgrow. And it's a terrible thing for the ecosystem. It's destroying coral reefs, smothering them, killing aquatic life, and it ruins the experience for beachgoers. That's was probably less important than wildlife, but it is important because there's a huge economic impacts from that. But most importantly, it's a huge methane emitter. So it's compounding the very CO2 problem that it's a result of by rotting on the beach and just emitting methane. So this company, they have contracts to clean the beaches. They take all of the sargassum, that seaweed overgrowth, and they turn it into awesome products. A biostimulant that replaces phosphate fertilizers, vegan leather for industrial applications, and is used in personal products that replaces petroleum-based emulsifiers. Another one, carbon geocapture. They have, through elegant chemistry, have made carbon sequestration 10 times more efficient. I know that carbon sequestration is a hot button issue in the world in the green world. A lot of people think it's a big con because it's sort of, the analogy is, you run a marathon to move an inch. It takes so much energy to sequester carbon underground using current technology that it's really, the juice isn't worth the squeeze because you have to create these high pressure bubbles underground. But this company has come up with a novel technology they use a low pressure water solution to pour carbon into unminable coal seams, uninvestable coal seams, which are abundant worldwide. Their natural CO2 sinks because the coal preferentially holds onto the CO2 and it can store for 1,500 years that carbon. So this is actually something that could make a real difference. And they're also working on direct air capture. So actually taking carbon right out of the sky, and they're at the forefront of that. There's other industrial innovations that are doing some of that same thing, but this is the one that I chose to bet on. And then the third one, this is a very recent one, is this company called Gentian. They're based out of the UK and they operate primarily in Europe, where all big polluters are required to take care of the natural wetlands and habitats that are near them, and they get fined if they're poor stewards of the environment in which they operate. But the problem is it's sort of analogous to a health inspector. A restaurant can go along operating, not realizing they're in violation of health codes until the inspector comes, and then they have to pay all these fines. So this company, Gentian, is real-time monitoring using satellite data, using high-resolution satellite data to give large industrial polluters a minute-by-minute sense of how they're doing in keeping up with their own environmental goals, and it prevents disasters before they happen. These are just some of the ones I'm invested in. There are others, but I thought that these would be interesting to you. And I want to stress that this is not just feel-good stuff. Like, these are companies that are making money. And my goal is to I retired young. My husband and I, neither of us are working. The last thing I want to do is squander my money on an idea just because it's a good idea. So, I want to make sure that you understand that part of my point is that it's not just to do things that are good, it's to do things that are good and that will do well, because those are the things that will ultimately make a difference in this battle that we're all engaged in to have a better world. So, Lori mentioned in the introduction that I have this philosophy. This came from many years ago. I was homeless. And one of the strategies I used to get through that time in my life was I actually started talking to my future self and using my own internal resources as a mentor and a guide, because I didn't have one. And for a long time, I didn't really talk about this. I kind of thought it was crazy. But then I stumbled on the research of I'm going to blank on his name. It's like Hal Schreibsinger or something. It's in my notes. Sorry. But he talks about the fact that there's actually real data to support this, that people who have a relationship with their future self and think about that person as a real person with wants and needs that you want to plan for now, have better life outcomes and are more satisfied at work, in their personal lives. So I've come to believe that there actually is some truth to what I sort of intuited as a teenager. But I think it's important for all of us to imagine the kind of world that we want for our future selves and to begin to work toward it. I mentioned before that some of my initial angel investments really were driven more by gut, and I had a lot of doubts about that as well. Like, I almost didn't want to talk about this for a long time because I didn't feel like I was being super scientific about the choices I was making, and they felt like bets rather than informed decisions. But I stumbled on this wonderful book by Gerd Giger, Gut Feelings. Malcolm Gladwell based a lot of his book Blink on Gerd's research. And basically, he justifies the idea of intuition. Now, you can take this too far, right? And there are times when intuition fails, and we can take intuition to a place where we rely on our intuition over facts, and that leads to conspiracy thinking. So I'm not advocating that at all. But we did it. He talks about the evolutionary aspects of intuition and why we evolved this ability to form patterns in our minds based on little bits of data. And it functions best, our intuition functions best when we have some expertise. So for me, I really understand the marketing piece of the companies I've invested in. I may not understand all the product stuff or, some of the capital expenditures, but if I understand how to do the marketing, I can form a picture, right? And then you do research to make sure that you can justify and validate your intuitions. But that's a process that I think actually has some value. And the reason I bring it up is that I think a lot of people are afraid of angel investing for the very reasons that I'm talking about. They feel like they can't fully do due diligence or evaluate the veracity of the claims that a founder is making. But I think I want to encourage you to accept the idea that you know more than you think you do, if you have had that doubt, and that all of us have some expertise we can bring. All of us who have any experience in the business world, and that's basically all of us, have some expertise we can bring to begin to form an idea of whether a founder is suitable. The quick rubric I use when I evaluate a company is, do I understand the problem they're trying to solve, and does it feel urgent to me? Do I have a faith or some gut level trust that this is the team who can do it? And you're relying on, that's where it does get a little fuzzy, right? Like you're taking a bet on this founder's energy and the story they tell and the way they tell it. So far, I've been lucky, and it doesn't have to be perfect. If you look at resources that guide angel investors, they say that you want to have between 15 and 50 angel investments, because it's like a portfolio. You're going to have some ups and some downs and some hopefully some big wins. But if you do take this path, right now I think I'm only invested in about 6 companies right now at this particular moment. But I'm adding to that slowly over time. I add about 1 a year, and you only need one to do really well to kind of justify all of it. And every one of the companies that I'm looking at is doing something that I think is important and that my future self will value. I also think it's really important to create islands of stability. And I know you guys know this because that's part of why you're here on this call and working with Rotary and the Earth Talks Foundation. If we're intentional about what we're doing, it does help to combat despair. If we find a community of people who think like we do, that helps. It helps us keep our energy up. We can help to rally their spirits. when things don't look great. So I guess if you're already thinking that way, I just want to encourage you to think that angel investing is a natural extension of what you're already doing by participating in groups like this. And so here are some things things you can do right now. You can invest your money. And here's some resources that I looked at when I began this path of angel investing. I read this. I want to confess, I have not read all 6 of these books. 2 of them are still in my to-read queue, but all of them have great value. The 2 books on angel investing were the ones that I used to teach myself the basics as I made my first investments and before I joined the Transatlantic Angel Conference. With regard to mindfulness, This Changes Everything by Naomi Klein is a wonderful book. I have not read yet The Uninhabitable Earth by David Wallace Wells, but it was strongly recommended to me by someone whose opinion I value. And then, I think connecting mindfulness directly to sustainability, more and more people are moving in that direction. And the latter 2 books are in that vein of thinking of our intentionality as something that we do not just for ourselves, but for our environment. The path forward, practice equanimity. It's real. If you find yourself falling into the trap of media despair, which is what they want, which is how they make money, by remember that all we have is our attention and our intention. So although it's hard some days to pull yourself away from the nonsense, when someone says something so obviously untrue, sometimes you do want to engage in the fight on Facebook or Reddit. But I encourage you as much as possible to reserve your energy for other things and to turn away from that, to act with intention, because there are wonderful things happening. If you do a simple Google alert, you'll find a different news source. You'll find different streams of news that are feeding your soul, giving you information that's positive and uplifting. And that will get you excited about supporting entrepreneurs because they're doing incredible things. Large corporations have really, we suffer from too much short-term thinking in our general world, but particularly in corporations, this obsession with shareholder value. And entrepreneurs are doing that. They're coming up with the green tech entrepreneurs in particular, although, making money is part of the equation, they really are, a lot of them, coming at it from a science base, from a we're all in this together, we only have one world kind of view. And I think that there's a lot that will encourage you as you start to look there. And then trust your gut. If someone pitches you an idea and you feel like you can't fully evaluate it, there have definitely been wonderful ideas that I did not invest in because I didn't feel like I knew enough. I didn't feel like I understood how to market that company, and I didn't feel like I knew enough to evaluate whether the claims that founder was making were valid. Totally fine. I'm not their investor. Someone else is. But if you're looking, you will find companies that you do understand, and I think that can be very encouraging. Oh, and I left some Latin text in here. That's very funny. Yeah. So in conclusion, we can't control what governments do, and the world is going to go on being a mix of forward progress and stalled momentum. But we get to choose where our attention and where our capital goes, and we can make choices that are going to make the world better for our future selves, for our children, and I think that there's a lot of hope in that. And I hope that something I said to you today was new, something you hadn't thought of. And I also want to encourage you to think that you don't need to be rich for this type of investing. Most angel conferences, it's only a commitment of about $5,000 US because what happens is they pool the resources of these investors together. So it becomes one, $300,000 fund, part of a seed round for a startup, but you're only $5,000 of that, or sometimes less, but between 5 and 10 is normal. So you don't need to have tons of resources. The rule of thumb when you're angel investing is that you shouldn't really spend more than about 10% of your annual income or of your total capital. So if you're a retired person and you have say 2 million net worth, it's reasonable to invest about 200,000. So that's a big number, right? If your net worth is smaller, if it's only 500,000, it's still reasonable to invest about 50,000 of that. So again, don't do anything that is going to ruin your financial life, but this is probably more within reach than you think. And that is, I had never really put these ideas together. Lori, I think, asked me to do this because she had read my blog where I talk about some of my mindfulness dealing with the anxiety that goes on in the world and some of my investing. And I had never really thought of this as a philosophy, but as I was putting this presentation together, I realized it is. I actually have been kind of operating from a philosophy of taking action in this way to combat my own despair, to make me feel like I'm doing something. I'm not a chemical engineer who's going to come up with an idea that changes the world, but I can help the people who are. I can help them along the way. I can raise my hand and say, hey, I think you're doing great work and I want to be part of it. And I want to benefit from it financially too, as you have this success. So that's the spirit in which I share this. And yeah, I guess I will stop sharing and go to the Q&A.
Joes, thank you so very much. That was just fantastic. And we have some questions lined up. The first is Najodi, who will present your certificate. And then we'll go into Bertel's question.
So thank you so much and excellent presentation, Joseph Riddle. And you have given a very great ideas and lot of sustainable practices which are really practical and implementable. So this is our Earth Talks weekly program. Every Thursday we organize and we are actually with our vision, mission and our focus as well as the whatever the expertise is related to the Earth Talk. We are dealing with, we are having a biodiversity, climate and pollution related experts around the overall environmental experts. And this is our your certificate. We recognize your generous contribution as a guest speaker to our Earth Talk weekly program. Thank you so much for accepting our proposal and giving us a great, excellent presentation.
Thank you so
Our
much.
future speakers, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And you are always welcome to join our meetings. And we are going to weekly invite you. We will send you as per your convenience. Anytime you can join. So our upcoming talk programs are with the Diona first is going to present. Then next, this is our flyer, next meeting flyer. I would like to invite everyone to our meetings. So Laurie, I want to just hand over the session to you.
Oh, wonderful, Najodi, and she'll put the links in the chat. Again, thank you so much. And
Yeah.
Joes, I'm sure that all of us would love to have a list of those resources. If you
Yeah.
could email or however, send me a link to those, and especially to your blog, because what we'll do is we will put those links in the YouTube, the Spotify, and the blog summaries of this presentation, because I know that everyone is gonna want to see what those are, and especially to get your subscription, whatever, to his blog, because it comes out, I wanna say, like, once every 2 weeks, right?
Once a month, once every couple of weeks. Yeah, I read something. Yeah.
Which is great because it's not like you'll be spammed. You know, you get this monthly uplift. And it's like, I can continue in with this climate action and with these people. These are good people. So it's just this monthly nutrition, mental and spiritual nutrition. So let's go to our first
And Joseph,
question.
you are going to receive our email with your certificate. Thank you.
Bertel, please. You're so patient.
Yes, Joseph, great talk. I'm totally with you. Curation of the feed of what is going into your mind is very important. Mindfulness is very helpful. All kinds of forms of mindfulness are helpful. My question is, the organizations that you invest with, do you also invest with your time and with your expertise within your field?
I have. I don't always. One of but that is a common feature of this type of investing. And typically, the earlier you invest with a company, the more likely you are to become an advisor or to eventually be on a board or something like that. So, but the earlier you invest in a company, the greater risk there is. The more you're betting on the idea and the founder. Right. So a couple of my investments have come a little bit later when companies have a little more, they're more in a growth phase and they have a little market traction. So by that point, they usually have the media advisors. But there is one company that I've done quite a bit of research for. I've helped them earn some PR placements. And I got them interviewed on one of the blogs, the podcasts that I listen to. So that can be part of angel investing. What's your background, Bertel? What is your professional expertise?
I'm also in the publishing sector. I publish educational magazines in Netherlands, and I publish fundraising magazines for mostly the Protestant sector for Protestant NGOs within Netherlands.
Yeah.
So major donors, small donors, and how do you call it? The heritage endowment
Mhm.
funds.
Yeah.
But I
So-
live in the Philippines and I do the same over here. And over here, I'm mostly working with planting mangroves.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. So I think that background would be valuable to I have sort of discounted the value of media expertise because so many of my friends and I have it. And, but for a lot of people who are they come out of the product world and the programming world, a lot of them actually do need expertise around content and media and how to think about a media strategy. So that's all of us have a skill set that we can bring to founders.
Yeah.
And if you look at young companies, you're more likely to be an advisor.
And nowadays, with the abundance of media and how easy it is to make media, I'm one of the followers of people that say curation will be the new way forward. Hey, you will follow people that you have been following probably for years, or that you hear speak and that you think for like, yeah, and I think that way as well. And yeah, oh really? Oh, what else is in your brain? let me pick it.
Yeah, I think we're already rebounding to a world where there's so much AI slop and terrible, bad content that I believe that quality human created content will become even more valuable. And we may even get back to a place where journalism is valued again because I think we've passed the worst of the kind of race to the bottom with terrible free AI slop content. That's my hope anyway.
Yeah, met a Dutch journalist, and his name is 25 years ago. And he was working for one of the biggest newspapers in the Netherlands. He said, "We only place negative news in the newspaper. I don't like this." He made his own magazine. Within an article, he would say the first paragraph would be about the problem. The rest 4 or 5 pages would be only about solutions to that problem or mindsets or anything positive. And the name of the magazine was called Ode, an ode, bringing an ode to something. But when they went international, they started calling it The Optimist. And it's still around. I think he sold it, but because, yeah, you know it yourself.
Yeah.
It sounds nice. Writing a book, it sounds nice. It's work. So,
Yeah.
but also would be glad to get your details and get on your list. So I hear some more of you, and maybe we can also bring him in contact with our VZ guy that we know from, how do you call it? From the past president of FREG, his son.
Oh, yes, with Yashar's son,
Yes.
Jean or Jean.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he is a venture capitalist who only puts his money into green solutions.
I love that. I love connecting it.
Like
Yeah.
millions of
Yeah.
it. So pretty big fund. I believe
Wonderful.
There's
Made
one
a
other
note of that.
question to Raj. Yeah.
Raj.
It's really just presentation. I have understand the two doubts too. The first question is that what I observed, the products in the market changes very fast because of the change in quality of life. Example, all electronic gases. In the 3 years, they become absurd. So investment in the market, considering the green economy, are the challenges about the changing demand of the people because of the change in quality of life. Change in quality of life is at the fastest rate. The second question in all your talk, we haven't considered newly coming upcoming concept, all as a circular economy. Almost all the industry, I'm a concerned corporate companies, and they're switching over from linear economy to corporate to circular economy. What is your opinion about including the circular economy? The circular economy is a challenge for the investor now because there are the many avenues, many opportunities to make an invest in circular economy. Are you considering these two concepts to your work?
The circular economy is a focus less on new and more on renewable and sustainable, right? Like repurposing materials and that kind of thing. Yeah. So as I understand it, is that what you
No,
mean?
the linear economy is from raw material to the disposal, raw material to manufacturing to usage disposal. The circular economy is raw material, then at each stage, manufacturing again circular economy, distribution again circular economy, usage circular economy, and that goes back to the raw material or the manufacturing process. That's the coming up. It's a very challenging one. I'm working on the circular economy. And this is a opening a new market and a new inviting the new investors for that. In fact, one of the industry I'm working, we are trying to take back entire car back to the factory once it is used. At the various places, at the various stages, we have a certain economy, and then at the end, entire the car will go back to the unit.
Yeah, thank you. I've heard that term circular economy used in different ways, and I'm, you know, I think I understand what it means, but I'm still learning. I don't see any of the companies that I've invested as being in conflict with the circular economy. In fact, Carbon Wave I would actually describe as kind of a participant in that. They're actually taking a material that's problematic, that is resulting from climate change, this overgrowth of seaweed, and they're turning it into materials that combat the problem that creates the sargassum, right? So I would argue that that maybe is part of the circular economy. But what I will say is that what I've seen from these from that the climate tech Google News Alert, which I'm telling you, do it will change your life. A lot of the new entrepreneurs coming up are very focused on sustainability. And they're not, I mean, they're capitalists in the sense that they need to make money and self-sustain, but it really is not, profit is not the only motive for a lot of these entrepreneurs. A lot of them do have a vision about a better planet. So I don't necessarily see them as in conflict with what you're talking about with the circular economy.
You guys, I'm going to
Yes.
stop us for the moment because we're at the top of the hour and we want to continue with this discussion. This is great. I am going to move to adjourn our meeting. And Joe's, can you stay on? Because Raj's question is excellent, and there may be others who want to continue to listen to the answer. Well, just thank you to all of you who came. We have a wonderful community, and we will see you next week. I'll stop the recording, but let's continue to talk.